This episode is brought to you by Modal Electronics, who enable you to play and perform powerful sound with their incredible synthesizers. You can enjoy vibrant wavetable patches with the Argon 8 series, or you can produce with state-of-the-art analog-style synth textures with the Cobalt 8 series. To check out Modal Electronics' incredible array of synthesizers, go to modalelectronics.com. Modal Electronics. Dare to sound different.
It's always been kind of a guiding force, you know, and like a beacon of, I guess it's, music has always been a place where somehow I kind of felt understood, or that the world would understand me, because there's music being created that I could relate to, if that makes sense. Even from when I was young, you know.
What music did you relate to, first of all, that you can recall? What types of music?
The Beatles. The Beatles were the first thing that when I started hearing them, I just heard that something was different, you know. As a young kid, there was something in the. When I think about it now, it's very like on a very, not to get too like hippy dippy or anything, but on a vibrational level, you know. Their harmonies were something that like was very, I think. Just kind of cut through everything, and there was something very different about it, and something very stirring about it, and beautiful about it, and mysterious and familiar at the same time. You know, as I kind of, I don't know, was I 8 or 9 when I started listening to them, and just started to get into them more, you know. And I think I started with the earlier stuff, you know, like the first 2 albums. And the more I listened, and seeing how more complex their music got over the years, it just started expanding my, you know, my understanding of music, or at least opening the possibilities of music for me. But the first album I ever bought on my own was actually A Night at the Opera, which took things in a very different place for me, because I had first heard Bohemian Rhapsody on the radio, I think. I was 10. And, you know, this guy talking about being, you know, killing someone and going to be executed, and was very strange, you know, like this. At 10, that is very, you know, very real and very scary and very dark. And the fact that someone wrote a song about it, and then had all these very complex layers of orchestration and operatic vocals and things. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever heard, and I kind of, it was very, I had to go get this record and understand who these people were, and what this was about and why, and then buying that record and listening to it from the beginning, and all the different songs, and it's one of those things where I just stared at that album and the lyrics and the photo. There was only just one photo each of the band, you know. Just trying to penetrate it, you know, understand deeper. What is this about? You know, why did they make this record? What are they trying to do? Who are these people? You know,
that
music.
Mystique to it.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I still like that record a lot to this day.
Yeah, it's a fantastic record.
Yeah.
And I mean, the early Beatles stuff, if that is your introduction to music, like it was mine, despite the fact that a lot of people, you know, in my class were listening to more contemporary stuff. Like if you start with the Beatles, then if you go and listen to something like A Night at the Opera, you can see that they did take some influence from things like maybe like Pepper, like songs like A Day in the Life, that type of very arty production and creativity. So in terms of getting into Queen, getting into A Night at the Opera, did you continue being into Queen, and did you continue being into rock music and that type of rock music? How has your taste evolved over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I stayed into Queen for a while, and the album after that was A Day at the Races, which also was a really big record for me, although it wasn't as popular as A Night at the Opera, but I mean, there's some amazing songs on that record as well. I mean, they're kind of companion, obviously the white and the black, and this kind of similar cover art and everything. There,
Mm.
but I kind of was in a wasteland of music for, I would say, from like 13 to 17, and was basically listening in the U.S. It was FM, kind of classic rock, which wasn't all that interesting. A few did get the Who and Zeppelin, the Stones, and the Beatles, of course, and but I really didn't start getting into other, like garage punk, post punk, no wave, noise, alternative, indie rock till my late teens when I finally started studying acting in New York City. I was kind of sheltered musically, and I had no one in my life that really, in high school, that was really into any of that and was not exposed to any of it. I remember there was a girl in my high school who had a T-shirt with Lou Reed on it. And I didn't know who that was. I was like, "Who's that on your shirt?" It's like Lou Reed. I'm like, "Who is that?" Walk on the Wall. So I was like, "Oh, he's good." And it would be years until I really got into Lou Reed, but I didn't even know who that was in high school. I mean, I had moved right before high school and was living about an hour north of where I grew up. And yeah, it was not, there weren't many people going outside of the mainstream there, and neither was I, you know. And then it kind of everything hit me like an avalanche once I started being around people who were into, other things that were going on, and starting to see bands and in the early 80s in New York.
What are some of the best gigs that you've ever been to?
The Ramones are pretty great. That was a good one. Um, the Pixies early on. I forget which was I've seen them many times. The Pixies were a band that really I kind of really resonated with me. The Smiths on the Queen is Dead tour they only
Wow.
I think came to the U.S. twice. So the Queen is Dead. I'd gotten into the Smiths about a year or two on Meet His Murder, really. And then the Queen is Dead came out in '86. That was a big deal for me and some of my friends when that album came out. It was kind of expanding on those feelings that I had as a kid. That the first time I heard the Smiths was the B-side of the 12-inch of Boy with the Thorn in His Side, and it was the B-side of that was Rubber Ring, which went right into Asleep. And I had never heard of the Smiths, and my friend put them on, and it was one of those moments where what you're hearing is kind of exactly what your brain kind of needed at that moment somehow. Like if they would have found some algorithm in my brain to what would resonate with me in the moment, it would have been that song and that voice and that guitar and that just and I didn't know what it was or what I was hearing. And then when Rubber Ring kind of segues into Asleep, it just kind of floored me. So they played at the pier. There used to be concerts on the West Side Pier near where the Intrepid is now in New York City, and it was incredible. Morrissey danced for hours, and it was a really big deal for us.
Yeah, must have been
Another one
amazing.
was My Bloody Valentine. I mean that which I kind of saw them by mistake in a way because they opened for Dinosaur Jr. on the Loveless tour. But Dinosaur Jr. was a headliner. We were going to see them. We were in Athens, Georgia, working on a film project, and I had never heard of My Bloody Valentine, and they're just standing in this club, and the force that came out of those speakers that night was just I don't know, that it was kind of mind-blowing, transcendent, to the point where I had to leave after they were done. It was just too much.
Really?
Yeah, it was too much to experience anything else. What happened was just too profound to even though I loved and still love Dinosaur Jr. I couldn't.
That is crazy.
I was spent. It was
That
just
is
too.
crazy though. If you've been to see the gig, like Dinosaur Jr. was the headline act, you booked to see that, and the support act is so good that you leave before. Like I don't think I've ever heard of that. I mean, you can
Nothing to
see
take.
why.
Yeah, nothing to take away from. I mean, I've seen Dinosaur many times since, and I mean, they're
Mm.
one of my favorite bands still, and I love them. It was just I was unprepared, you know. I didn't understand what was going to happen that night, and it was
That is crazy.
yeah. So those are some big ones. You know, the first time I did see Lou Reed was another incredible experience. I saw Miles Davis play once in the
Wow,
'80s in New York. Um, that was pretty wild.
that must have been
Patti
amazing.
Smith, the first time I saw her play. But there's a, I don't know. Do you know Miracle Legion? Do you know that band, Miracle
I
Legion? They're a
know the
band
name, but I
from
haven't heard the
Connecticut.
music.
Um, they began playing in the '80s and in the post-punk era. Still playing today. Um, Kind of the favorite of a lot of musicians. There was the lead singer Mark Mulcahy. They Polaris was an offshoot of Miracle Legion, but Mark Mulcahy's wife passed away at one point, and a lot of musicians did a tribute record to him and to his wife, and Tom York being one of them, and a lot of the bands
Wow.
that they toured with over the years in U.S. and Europe and stuff. But seeing them for the first time at Maxwell's in Hoboken, there was a great rock club. It's not there anymore. That was one of the best shows I ever had seen as well.
Well, I'm gonna check out their stuff. Yeah, that
Oh, they're
name
great.
is mentioned a lot. Um, and nowadays, how do you take in your music? Do you listen to do you use streaming services like most of the world?
I do, yeah, I do. Um, Instagram is a great way to get turned on to music, I find, you know, by following people of like mind and like similar tastes or not similar tastes. Oh, Sonic Youth, that was another great concert. The first time I saw them, that
Wow.
was pretty incredible. Um, yeah, I do use streaming. I think it's, you know, streaming's great because you can get exposed to a lot of, you know, music that you might not have been exposed to in the past. I mean, there's a few Instagram sites that music writers that I like. Trial and Error Collective is a really good one. Parisha Ishrati, she's a great blogger. Her knowledge and breadth of music is really quite impressive, and new music especially.
Hmm. And what are some of the things that you've heard recently, like newer acts that you thought were really good?
I like Hennessy a lot. Leah Hennessy is the singer. The band is called Hennessy. Um, I think she's doing some really interesting stuff. Jesse Mallin's last album I thought was really great. They're both New York, on the New York scene, he, and they're really good. I like the band L.A. Witch a lot. I think they're really cool. I got to see them play once in New York. They're really good. Habibi is a really cool. I think they're from Brooklyn or based in Brooklyn. Big Thief blows my mind. I think they're incredible. I really love what they're doing. Um, those are a couple of the new ones I've been, you know, that I
Yeah,
like gravitating towards.
yeah. They well, Big Thief in particular. I'm familiar with. I'm going to check out the others, but yeah, it is a time where there is so much stuff being released, that more stuff probably than ever. Uh, Great stuff. It's just difficult to wade through the abundance of content that we've
That's
got to
true.
find the great stuff.
That's true. I mean, and I think now that things are starting to open up, uh, live performances are going to be even more well attended. I think people, you know, for me, rock really is a communal experience. You know, going to see. I don't like. I mean, I playing in my band. I really prefer playing to places where people are standing as opposed to sitting or eating, or both.
Yeah,
And the same as going to see a band, I like to stand in rock clubs. I don't like being sit. I don't like it as much when I'm sitting in a theater or something or an arena. It's much more fun to be in a club shoulder to shoulder with people and really experiencing that. I mean, to me, that's when it's special, you know. And I think people are going to really want that experience after being kind of away from it for so long, you know.
And in terms of like your actual your own involvement with music, playing music, being in bands, when did you first pick up a guitar?
When I was 20, 1986, a couple of us formed this, basically a no-wave band in 1986. Filmmaker, who's now a filmmaker and a writer, Tom Gilroy, and myself, and a couple other people. And I was just learning a few chords, so I went to the guitar store and I bought the only guitar I could afford. The cheapest guitar they had was a nylon string, you know, acoustic guitar. And I bought a little pickup for it and would plug it into an amplifier. And the other guitars had a Rickenbacker hollow body, you know, like a kind of like a George Harrison type of Will Sargent type guitar. And we were kind of loud electric, and I was trying to make sounds out of this nylon string acoustic, and that was how I learned guitar. And that we were in, it was just in, there was no vocalist in that band, just instrumental. We you know, wrote music and played a few gigs, and then that didn't last too long. And then I sang and wrote some songs in a band that now has became a band called Wild Carnation, that I think that has made some records and still together, and I think still makes records and records. And we wrote a bunch of songs, and just before we were kind of gonna like start gigging and stuff, I had to leave the country for a project, a film project, and I didn't want to hold those guys up, and I was like, I don't know. There were a couple of things happening, and I was like, you know, it's better off if you guys figure, you know, go on. I don't want to hold you up for the, you know, musically. So, and I didn't play for a number of years. That was 1990, I think. And then the current band was formed in 2006, Zopa. Yeah.
And you've released last year La Dolce Vita, and
yeah, on streaming. It just came out in vinyl like last month.
yeah, is it on? It's on Bandcamp, isn't it?
It's on Bandcamp, and through Mount Crushmore Records, you can get it on vinyl.
That's that. Why did you decide? Did you keep it off Spotify and places like that?
No, we're all kind of lame technically, so I guess eventually we'll get it on Spotify when we figure out how to do it or something. It's embarrassing, but yeah, it's kind of that. Just we should. I mean, much more people are on Spotify, I guess, than Bandcamp. But
No, well, I think music lovers are on Bandcamp. Bandcamp is a very cool platform.
I like it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, they curate really well, and it's a better like model as well for musicians, because
I think
Spotify is awesome as a consumer, but
yeah.
it's not great for artists.
Well, it's been really cool because a lot of people have actually listened on Bandcamp, and it's resulted in us getting offers for gigs, you know, and also the vinyl came out of people hearing it on Bandcamp, and some of the shows we've been offered. You know, when we first started playing shows back in 2006, for a few years, it was just really word of mouth. We didn't have a record. The Sopranos was still on, and then it was just over, and it was kind of more of a curiosity thing of, you know, me being in a band or whatever. So it's been a big difference actually having a record out and people listening to it and just saying, okay, so either you like it or you don't like it, but you know, at least it kind of, I think the music is standing on its own merits finally, which is nice.
Yeah, and people will come to the show having listened to the record. They'll be familiar with it, and you know, even if they're familiar with the Sopranos and love the Sopranos, they'll also love the music. You know, like there's a bit more of that. Whereas before, I guess it would have, if it's just word of mouth and people know that you're in it, like there's no other way of them wanting to go other than just looking at your previous work in something like the Sopranos. So it's great to get out there. Yeah,
and it's you know, things happen in their own time. also social media, and Instagram in particular, has been a big, for people who, I don't know me from the Sopranos or whatever, just seeing that I am into music, and the bands that I'm into, and people kind of having similar likes. We actually met a filmmaker, Scottish filmmaker named James Price, who followed me on Instagram, listened to the record, and last year contacted us and said he wanted to make a video for one of our songs. And we were like, they're in Scotland. I'm like, we're not really doing that now. We don't have a budget. He goes, I don't need a budget. I got my crew. I got my people. We'll just do it. And I said, so he listened to the record, and I said, I don't want to know what you're going to do. If we let you do it, you go ahead and do whatever you want. I just said the song has to be hopeful. There has to be an element of hope in it. And he went off and made this video. And it's, kind of amazing, and really well done. I mean, it was kind of amazing how it just happened that way. People you never met, ever, listening to it and connecting on social media. And then we had a virtual premiere over Zoom with the filmmaker and the band. People kind of got signed on to Zoom for the premiere of the video and got to do a Q&A. And it's been a very strange time making these friendships and collaborations, artistic collaborations with people I've never met and still have never met. I don't think I've ever really experienced that before, but there's certainly, you hear about the negatives of social media and how it is a negative influence in a lot of lives, but there's also certainly very positive ones that have come out of it, I think.
Yeah, you're talking now, and it is refreshing, because I definitely spend too long whinging about oh, no one listens to vinyl anymore, oh, no one reads books anymore, and just whinging. But actually, you've talked about the best sides of it. You can get turned on to a great record through Instagram. You can meet people of like mind and collaborate with them. And that goes for all social media platforms.
Yeah.
And I guess these things are like tools. If you spend all day flicking through TikTok or Instagram or whatever, wasting your time, that's kind of on you. That's just a bit if you drink from morning till sundown every day.
I agree. I think there's a lot of benefit to and it's just the nature of reality. The world is a lot smaller. We're much more connected in ways that we've never been, and we have to kind of look towards the future to find the ways of that being positive, and the way that can bring us together more. Why not?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of Zopa getting gig offers, have you accepted some? Are you going out and playing some shows when things as things open up?
Our first show, what we actually did, Jesse Mallon did a benefit for Coney Island, USA, which is where the museum is, the sideshow, the Mermaid Parade. It's a very important cultural institution in New York historically for many, many, many years. So we did a benefit, a bunch of bands. And that was we had not played together for a number of years, because I had moved to the West Coast, and we were doing different things. So I moved back to New York this year. We started practicing and got 2 songs together for this live stream, which is the first time we played in years. And that was a good way to kind of just focus on 2 songs. We have our first live concert in August in New York at the Mercury Lounge. The first show sold out. We just added another show. We are going to play the Freak Out Festival in Seattle in the fall, in November. We have a few more offers, but we're trying to figure out, it's just us. We don't have any management or tour management or anything, so it's we have to figure out ways of routing ourselves, so to make it feasible, rather than just fly to Los Angeles or something for one show, so but yeah, I think we'll be doing more now that they're opening up. But I'm really excited about the Mercury Lounge. Is one of my favorite venues in the city. So that's gonna be really fun.
So, and that's in August in New York.
Yeah, mid-August. Yeah.
Wow, that's going to be incredible. How long do you reckon you'll play for?
How long? You mean that?
Will you play the full record?
No, we're not. We're not gonna play the full record. I think we're gonna. I don't know. Probably play for, not on the probably on the shorter side rather than on the longer side. You know, we have two. We're not really sure yet. We have a new song that we're working on. We have a little cover medley that we're working on. And there's a few songs from an EP that was never really released that we're working on. We'll do a few songs from the record, of course, but some of the older songs. It's weird because there's a couple of songs, one of which is on the record, that were written in the late 80s.
Wow.
Before I was with these guys. These guys are much younger than me, but Olmo Ty and Elijah Hamilton, but there's one song on the record, one on the EP that were written in like 1989.
Wow.
Kind of, but were never performed or never recorded.
They were never recorded. So how did you kind of did you have them on like an old cassette or something?
No.
They were all just stored up there? Really?
Somehow, luckily, yeah.
I mean, that shows that they were keepers though, because like you would definitely forget.
Yeah.
And you just kind of thought, did you have the words written down or anything?
No, but I would play them over the years. You know, like I mean, I never stopped playing guitar and playing music. It's just there was a big long stretch of time where I just did it on my own. You know, was recording stuff on my own but those songs just somehow stayed. And when we started playing together, I brought them in and they just kind of worked for us. It's a very weird story how the band formed, which I can go. I don't know how much time you have. It's.
Oh no, we've
kind of
got
fascinating.
time. We've got
So
time.
when I was 25, I did a movie called Postcards from America. It was a British director named Steve McLean. It was a movie about the artist David Wojnarowicz. And the artist, David, the main character, David Wojnarowicz, was played by three actors. The oldest version was played by Jim Lyons, who was a famous editor and the lover of Todd Haynes, the filmmaker. Jim passed away, unfortunately. But the 18-year-old David Wojnarowicz was played by Michael Ty, who went on to be a musician and was in Jeff Buckley's band and on the Grace album, was a guitar player. The 8-year-old actor played David was a guy named Olmo Ty, was Michael's brother. And I played the 18-year-old's friend. So fast forward, this was 1991 when we filmed this. Fast forward to 2005 or 6, and I wanted to be in a band again. And I was at a party and I ran into Michael Ty. And for some reason I said, "How's your brother?" who I hadn't seen since he was 8 years old. This is 15 years later. He said, "Well, Olmo plays the drums and he works at the Strand bookstore." Now, I don't know what music Olmo played. I didn't know what he looked like. I don't know why this got in my head, but for some reason I was like, you have to find Olmo to be in the band. I don't know why. It was some strange intuition. So I start going to the Strand bookstore and they wear name tags, all the employees. So I thought, this is great because I'll just look at all the employees and I'll find it. So I go, I don't find him. I start going like once or twice a week for like a month and I don't find him. Finally, I asked someone, "Does he work here?" And he said he works in the warehouse. So I write him a note. So he calls me and I tell him, you want to meet? So we meet in a studio and we start playing. And it was good, felt good. And he said, I have a bass player who I went to high school with. So Olmo was 23, I was 40 at the time. Said, okay, so we set up a rehearsal with this bass player. The day before, I'm at the flea market, the antique market, with my wife. And we're at this stand. My wife knows a lot of the people there, and she's talking to one of the dealers. And this guy comes up, it's the dealer's son. He says, "Oh, I'm playing bass with you tomorrow." Okay. And it turns out his cousin used to manage me. So there's all these very weird. And then the three of us played together and that was it. It just was. So I don't know. I really don't know what got in my head about Olmo and why I thought I needed to see him. But sometimes you got to follow your gut, right?
So when was that? Like 2005, 2006? And how regularly, because obviously, I mean, you've done all sorts of things since then, and like, your acting career must have been pretty time consuming. So how often have you got the chance to play together? Has it been consistent? Have there been years where you've played less?
Well, from 2006 to 2013, we did a lot of shows, mostly in New York. Um, we opened for Robert Pollard once from Guided by Voices, and we opened for Tommy Stinson from Replacements once, and we did a little East Coast tour with a musician named Patty Rothberg and her band. Mostly did New York. We played a few shows in LA, but then we made the record in 2012, no, 2013. But then there was a number of years for about 6 years we didn't play at all.
Why was that?
I was living in the West Coast, and I wasn't able to get back here, and then I was out of the country working. I was in Europe working. I was in Puerto Rico working, and it just wasn't sustainable not being able to practice regularly. It wasn't sustainable to just meet and do a show. It was too much. As the time got stretched out, it just wasn't working. So I moved back to New York this year. So now we've been pretty regular about practicing and working on a set for the first show we have, and it's been great. It kind of picked up. I think kind of picked up a little further than where we left off. Just Omo wound up marrying my cousin, and they have 2 kids now. So I think as you get older, I think the work gets more resonant. As you get older, live life a little more and see more things that I think the work can get a little deeper. If your technique can follow through on that as well and follow up on that.
In terms of maintaining your technique, as a guitarist, and singing, and just being able to play, how much do you play day to day? Say you're working on a film or a TV show or whatever. Do you play every day, or do you find yourself obviously playing a lot more when you're working on music, and then not playing so much?
I play a lot more when I'm working on music. I mean, now I'm playing a lot. I mean, I don't really consider myself a guitarist. I play the guitar, but I'm more of a rhythm guitarist who has to play leads sometimes because there's no lead guitarist. But for me, it's playing with Olmo and Elijah that really inspires me to get better all the time. Either when we're playing together, when I'm at home, working on my stuff to bring to practice. Something about the 3 of us together to me is very, very special musically. When I was putting this band together, I had a certain sound in mind, and a certain type of musician that I wanted to work for, especially with drums and bass. And somehow they were exactly that and more in a way, and it took a while. It took a long time to actually get to that sound, particularly from me, because I was the least skilled musician out of the 3. But they're very distinctive at what they do on their instruments. It's unique the way they approach it, which for a trio is good because the sound has to be. It's not just a singer-songwriter with a backing rhythm section. It's a band with individual components, so each one has to kind of be distinctive and kind of big. Yeah, fill that space because it's only 3. I always thought a trio is a little easier to get. It's easier to get 3 people to coordinate schedules than 4.
Right, yeah, that's very true. That's such a big problem for bands, and then also probably musically in some ways. Obviously, you need to be able to fill that space and make your playing kind of powerful and distinctive enough. But if people aren't on the same page musically, if you've got 2 guitarists or a guitarist and a piano player, and you don't have clearly defined roles or something, I don't know, like 3 pieces, a really good 3-piece, and keeping it simple for live stuff, particularly live stuff in small venues. I don't know, there's a lot to be said for that rather than overcomplicating it.
That's what we try to do exactly, and not just for live, but and just try to expand that into the recordings and the writing as well, and make it your sound. You know, make that your sound and make that sound as good as it can be. Not it's not making the best out of it. It's making that your sound. You know, I mean, there's not. I remember we did a couple of shows with a band, had a really good singer, really good guitar player. And then they would hire other people to play with them who were not into the music per se, but were doing it because they were kind of getting paid for the gig and almost resented the music. And it was very disturbing to watch that, you know, because the other two who had written the songs, you know, and were passionate about it, really passionate about it. And then you have people who are playing it very competently. They're very skilled musicians, but yet they're not really so passionate about the material. It was very disturbing to watch that. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem with session players to a certain extent. Not all session players. You get wonderful
not all.
session players who make
Not
a
all.
record. You know, the Wrecking Crew, or you know, the guys in the '70s. I think the Immediate Family, like people
Yeah.
like Steve Gadd or Lee Sklar. I don't know, and all people up to the modern era, wonderful players. But if you have those kind of like people who, you know, look like they're about as enthusiastic as your average kind of low paid like insurance clerk playing bass on someone's record, like just like day tripper type of, not
Yeah.
really caring about the material. It must be heartbreaking for a writer to watch someone just be like bored witless from
Yeah.
material that they've poured their heart and soul into.
Yeah, and it can't help but show in the result, you know. You know, we have an interesting. I mean, for me, I like the approach to a lot of the songs are written in the studio, in their practice, you know, rehearsal studio, and sometimes it'll come from a drum beat, sometimes it'll come from a bass line, you know, and then there'll be a chord progression, and then the lyrics will come somehow, and you know, it's usually not some fully formed thing that most of the time I write the lyrics and sing, although sometimes Elijah does and Omo has as well. But it's usually never a full form song like this is what you do and you guys figure out your parts. It really kind of, the songs often kind of happen and are created through that, what's happening in the studio and the interplay between the, you know, the instruments, which is really fun.
Yeah, I mean that type of collaboration is like, yeah, arguably the pinnacle of what makes music so good.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to turn our attention for the last bit of this podcast episode to your new podcast, or well, not new because it's been going for quite a while. It's been going since last year, but Talking Sopranos, where you know you're going through each of the episodes, and I mean, well, you can explain it better than I can for sure. But essentially, you're kind of giving people insider info, right, on the episodes. Is that the idea behind it?
Yeah, it's what we do is we usually have a guest, and that could be a actor, it could be a crew person, writer, director. Now we've had a couple of celebrity super fans, which has been fun. We had Pete Davidson, Alec Baldwin. Today we're actually interviewing Ricky Gervais.
Holy moly!
Yeah, he's
About the Sopranos.
he came to the set once. We kind of are, we were friends, you know. He came and visited because he was working for HBO, and they, you know,
Yeah,
and I
yeah, yeah.
kind of showed him around the set, and then we became friends. So he's coming on today. We have Questlove coming on, but
Awesome.
so we have an interview, and then we do an episode. So and we break it down scene by scene, and we analyze. You know what? You know, I kind of look up all the cultural references and maybe locations, music. Then we'll talk about behind the scenes stuff that we remember and relate to, and also try to look at it, you know, in terms of the filmmaking and you know, camera work, editing, music is a big one, and just you know, just kind of really break it down and deep dive into the episode itself and the making of it, both from a insider and people who worked on it, but also as a someone who's, you know, spent most of their adult life in film, you know, and trying to, you know, kind of relate to it that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, the yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start with some of that because, like, first of all, how incredible to have Gervais talking about The Sopranos, because, like, The Sopranos, in my mind, is the greatest like TV show of all time in that type of like drama. I know it's a lot more than just a drama. There's elements of everything in it. And then Gervais, I feel like around that time was making like the two greatest comedies. So it'd be such a good podcast episode to have you all discussing The Sopranos. I mean,
Yeah, I
what a
think
treat.
so. I think it's going to be fun. I mean, The Office, the first time I saw The Office, somebody gave me the DVD. I don't know if it was the first season or the first two seasons. It might have been the whole series or something. And I just was knocked out when I watched that. I just, what they were doing was just very interesting, and very unique, and really groundbreaking and really fun.
So
Uh,
fun and
yeah,
so original. Nothing like it. And extras too. I don't know if you've seen extras.
I have.
So
I liked it. Yeah.
extras almost like was yeah, I saw extras first, I think. And but I mean, The Office was so groundbreaking. There's been a lot of imitations of The Office in British comedy. A lot of things, a lot of people doing the mockumentary thing and doing some really good stuff. But I don't know whether he was the first. I'm sure there were others, but I don't know. It felt like a very new way of approaching that style. So that's really exciting. In terms of The Sopranos, you touched on. Um, the fact that you're kind of going into each episode looking up the culture and the music. How much of this is new for you, given the fact that obviously you weren't in every scene? Like, did you rewatch every episode at the end of each season, or
Both Steve Sherpa, who co-hosts the podcast with me, and I, we have not watched this show since the original airings of the show back in the day when it was on. I would get DVDs in advance of the screening, but I watched every episode and I loved it. I really loved The Sopranos, but I had not watched it at all, for 13 years, and so it's been really, with hindsight and kind of some distance, and really paying attention to the details, which is what we have to do for the podcast.
mm,
It's kind of been amazing. I think it's surpassed my expectations, and really seeing just how good it is, and understanding why. A lot of younger people who were too young to watch the show when it was initially on are big fans of the show now.
mm,
Not a lot of series can do that. You're talking about a show that went on the air in 1999, 22 years ago. Not a lot of shows have that kind of longevity, and I get asked a lot, especially by journalists, why I think that is. And I've really come to the conclusion that it's just really good. It's just really, really well made. You could say it's the mob and people love the mob, or that you could break it down to different components, but overall it's just, you know,
that's I think that's a very reductionary view to have on it, that it's just because it's a mob show. Like, I think that's bullshit. There are so many like mob things that have been done since before
right,
that aren't as good.
that are
Like,
god awful. I've been offered a lot of them myself.
well, I can only imagine. But I mean, how many people tell you? Is it like every person that interviews you and asks you about The Sopranos? Does every single person just say, "Oh, it's the greatest TV show of all time"? And does that get boring to kind of hear it after a while?
A lot of people say that, and I kind of understand why after doing this podcast. I mean, it's very, very detailed and very dense, the show, and what's really come into focus for me doing the podcast is how the various themes that David Chase, I think, wanted to explore from the beginning, and maybe some that kind of came into focus as he went on, but just how strong he infuses them, and all the filmmakers involved infuse them into the material, the themes, the bigger themes about, when we interviewed David, we really got to a lot of the overall themes, besides this thing about familial love or not, unloving, a mother who didn't love the children and who undermining, and those, you know, that kind of dysfunction and how it kind of just spreads like a cancer. But the bigger themes of like the American dream and what that meant, and kind of the you know, the bullshit behind it, you know, and just seeing how much that comes to play in the show, how he weaved those themes in without them being heavy-handed, or without it being didactic or preachy or wearing it on its sleeve, but being, and still managing to be hilarious, compelling, emotional, you know.
Yeah,
It's it's pretty amazing.
It really, really is. In terms of David Chase and like the creation of that and the infusing, because you spoke of how kind of detailed and layered it is, and like, to be honest, I think I've only seen it once all the way through. I feel like I need to rewatch it a couple of times, like to really understand it more. What was it like, do you think, having, and you know, that podcast episode will explain more, but how complex would it have been to have like put all of that together? So many different characters that were so like detailed. It's not like your average superficial TV show character. And over so many seasons, everything makes sense. Things from season one really relate to the final season. And, you know, did he have like Venn diagrams all over his wall and some kind of really like, was this all consuming for him? Could you feel when you were producing this?
I think it was all consuming. I don't think it was that thought out, you know, to the end. You know, I think a lot of it was there. You know, I think what he wanted to do with it. You know, we asked him when he was on the podcast. I said, you know, what were you trying to do with this before you made it? And he said, I wanted to make something that I wanted to see on TV, that I would want to watch. And he said, you know, something that's, you know, deals with Italian Americans, something that has humor but also tragedy, something that's more layered and complex, all of which is what he did, you know. Something that would have longer takes, you know, and all of which he did. I think it was something also that evolved, you know, as you. I remember at the beginning of the seasons, because there were some seasons where I was in the writer's room, he did have, before we went into production, he did have an arc for the season. And you know, individually, the seasons were, okay, this is what, in general, I think happens. This is what this season's going to be about. This is where everybody ends up. This is where they begin. And that would change over the course of time and during the writing of the individual episodes. But there were... And I know he had the ending in mind quite a while before we shot it.
That's really interesting. Yeah, you must get asked about the ending to Absolute Death. The Sopranos paved the way, well, a lot of people seem to think, for some of the great TV shows that followed. Were you a fan, for example, of Mad Men, Breaking Bad, and other things that kind of followed the Sopranos that people cite in the same type of bracket?
You know, I don't watch a ton of series, you know. I saw the pilot of Mad Men, which I really liked. But you know, my favorite show is Afterlife, which is Ricky Gervais's show. Right now, that's my favorite show on TV. I watched the first 2 seasons and I just love it. I never saw Breaking Bad. I don't know why. It's not that I don't...
It's a bit similar to kind of the type of thing that you've been involved in for many years, I guess.
I'm a little bit more into the half hour.
Yeah.
I do like Barry as a half hour show. I like the idea of a half hour show that is not necessarily a comedy. You know, I'm actually writing a pilot with Alec Berg, who is the showrunner for Barry and directs it and writes it along with Bill Hader. We're working on something, a half hour show, which I'm very excited about.
Wow. And like, are you writing a pilot at the moment, or more than a pilot?
We're writing the pilot for HBO. Yeah, HBO bought the pitch, and we're writing the pilot, and hopefully we'll be shooting the pilot
Wow.
within the next year. We'll see. We got to write it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, lot to look forward to. So I wanted to finish off by asking, because it's Greatest Music of All Time podcast, Sopranos, full of amazing musical moments. So far, in terms of revisiting on the podcast, what are some that stand out to you, like uses of tunes?
My favorite song that was used on The Sopranos is Johnny Thunders. You can't put your arm around a memory. Just because it's one of my favorite songs of all time. I love Johnny Thunders. I think I love the fact that Johnny Thunders is on The Sopranos. I love the fact that I'm in the scene, that Johnny Thunders is playing the music. Um, Space Invader by the Pretenders is a great. I think it's an opening of one of the episodes in season 5. It's fantastic. Glad Tidings, the Van Morrison.
Mhm.
In I think it's the season 5 finale. Actually, plays 3 or 4 times. Keith Richards, through and through, the Stones. That's a great one. That's an opening montage for season 2, I think, or 3 maybe. That's a great one. Um, the Mazzy Star in season 1, beautiful. Um, those are some of the standouts. I'm missing a lot of them, but
Well, those are some pretty cracking moments. Yeah, I mean, there
yeah,
are so many, like almost every episode has some incredible sync in there. Uh, the couple that spring to mind were Tony, like blubbering his eyes out, listening to "Oh Girl" by the Chai Lights,
that's
driving.
fantastic. The Tinder Sticks, Tiny Tears is a great one.
Yeah,
The Isabella episode, that's a beautiful one. That comes on a couple of times. Um, what else? I'm thinking there's got to be. Oh, that song, Frank Sinatra. Uh, who is that by? Is that Cake or Spoon? I forget which band. Let me.
what they do a cover of Frank Sinatra.
No, it's the name of the song.
Oh, the song is called Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, it's Cake. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
great song. It's at the end of The Legend of Tennessee Multisanti.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, there are so many incredible moments. And yeah, one final question actually on the music front. What was Frankie Valli like to work with on The Sopranos?
Oh, he's wonderful. We got along really well. Um,
I mean, whose idea was it to cast him? Was he an acting?
he had done a little bit of acting before, not much. Um, Jersey guy from Newark, had his, was definitely around the mob in his early days, playing the club circuit back in the 50s and 60s. Um, he just kind of felt like one of the family. He was very professional and really into being part of the crew. That was the beauty of The Sopranos. We had a lot of great guests who came on as the show went on, and everyone really got into the spirit of the thing, which was very much a team or a band. They were just very. There were no egos there or hierarchy. Really, it was really very egalitarian in that sense. And he got into that spirit. And I think the first appearance of Frankie Valli was an episode that I wrote, um, which was a lot of fun. Actually, I think the first scene he's in is in the Four Seasons restaurant in New York, which was a little inside humor. But he's great. I mean, and he's somebody who, when you go through his catalog, it's just like hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. You kind of forget all the great songs that he's made over the years. Incredible.
Do you sometimes struggle to get up in the morning or wind down for bed at night? I used to find it so difficult. I woke up with no sense of positivity and brightness. I was void of motivation and spirit. This changed completely when I started waking up with a Lumi body clock. These incredible devices mimic the light and colour of a real sunrise and sunset, transforming the experience of waking up and going to sleep completely. Rather than being suddenly woken up with an alarm clock, the Lumi body clock will wake you up gradually with a natural sunrise. The Lumi body clock has been shown to improve the quality of sleep and awakening and to boost mood and productivity in clinical trials. You can personalize your sunrise and sunset from 15 to 90 minutes with their clinically tested unique natural light and more than 20 sleep and wake sounds. We all deserve to sleep well and to wake up feeling fresh. So if you're finding this a challenge and you want to try a new approach, go to lumi.com. If you're enjoying the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, you can keep up to date with all of our latest episodes for free by subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button is located at the top of the Tom Cridland YouTube page. It's also at the bottom right of any video that you watch on YouTube. If you're listening on an audio platform, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe at the top of the page.